Ambassador Zefkar stood in the central chamber of Nexus Prime, watching through the massive viewport as the human diplomatic vessel approached the station. The UCS Horizon looked small and fragile compared to the Alliance ships docked nearby. But Zefkar knew better than to judge any species by the appearance of their technology. His scaled skin, which had evolved to withstand the crushing heat of his homeworld's lava flows, reflected the dim lighting of the chamber. Around him, representatives from across the Deathworld Alliance waited in their various environmental suits and protective equipment. Each being in the room had survived conditions that would instantly kill most life forms in the galaxy. The humans have arrived, announced Rex of the Acid Rain Coalition, her voice coming through the chemical filters of her breathing apparatus. Her people had evolved on a world where the rain could dissolve stone and the very air was toxic to most. Carbon-based life. Their gift is aboard that vessel. Zefkar nodded slowly. The gift the humans were bringing had been the subject of intense discussion among the Alliance leadership for weeks. Atmospheric processors that could create human-breathable air seemed like such a simple offering, yet it represented something none of them had experienced before. Have our scientists finished their analysis of human atmospheric requirements? Asked Korth of the Frozen Waste Confederation. His massive form was encased in a refrigeration suit that kept his body temperature at the sub-zero levels his species required to survive. Ice crystals formed on his breathing tubes as he spoke. The data is fascinating, replied Dr. Veshti, the Alliance's chief xenobiologist. Her forearms moved gracefully as she manipulated the holographic display showing Earth's atmospheric composition. The humans evolved on a world with remarkably stable conditions. Their atmosphere is primarily nitrogen and oxygen, with trace amounts of other gases. The temperature range they prefer is incredibly narrow compared to our standards. Zefkar studied the display with interest. His own people could survive in temperatures that would melt most metals, while the ice worlders like Korth thrived in conditions that would freeze most liquid solid. The human temperature range looked impossibly limited by comparison. They must be incredibly fragile. Observe Commander Thrix of the radiation zones. Her people lived on worlds where the background radiation would cook most life forms in minutes. How did such weak beings achieve space travel? Perhaps their weakness is their strength, suggested Zefkar. Species that survive in moderate conditions often develop different kinds of resilience. They may have focused on technology and cooperation rather than individual physical toughness. The discussion was interrupted by the arrival of the human diplomatic team. The airlock cycled open, and 3 humans entered the chamber wearing simple, environmental suits. They moved with the careful grace of beings who were not accustomed to the mixed atmosphere of the station. Ambassador Zefkar, said the lead human, removing his helmet to reveal a face that looked impossibly young and unscathed. I am Captain Jake Morrison of the United Colonial Command. We are honored to present this gift to the Deathworld Alliance. Zefkar was struck by the smoothness of the human skin. There were no radiation burns, no chemical scarring, no signs of environmental damage that marked every member of the Alliance. The human looked like he had spent his entire life in perfect safety. Captain Morrison, Zefkar replied, his voice, carrying the deep rumble that came from vocal cords evolved to communicate over the roar of volcanic activity. The Alliance welcomes your gift. We are eager to experience the atmosphere that shaped your species. The humans seemed pleased by the response. We believe that sharing our atmosphere will help our peoples understand each other better. The air we breathe is part of what makes us human, and we want to share that with our new friends. Dr. Veshti stepped forward, her scientific curiosity overriding diplomatic protocol. Captain Morrison, our analysis suggests that your atmospheric requirements are remarkably specific. How do your people survive when conditions change even slightly? The human smiled, an expression that seemed both friendly and somehow unsettling. To beings who had never seen such unguarded emotion, we're actually quite adaptable. Humans live in many different environments on Earth, from hot deserts to frozen mountains. Our technology helps us survive in places where the natural conditions aren't perfect. But your base requirements remain the same, pressed Dr. Vashti. The fundamental atmospheric composition your bodies need to function. That's correct, said another human, a female who introduced herself as Dr. Lisa Grant. Our processors will create pockets of Earth-normal atmosphere wherever you install them. You'll be able to experience exactly what it's like to breathe our air. Zethkar felt a flutter of something that might have been nervousness. His people had never experienced another species' atmosphere before. The very concept was foreign to beings who had evolved in environments where any change in air composition meant immediate death. We have prepared a special chamber for the installation, he said. Our finest environmental engineers have created a space where the processors can operate safely. The humans exchanged glances, and Captain Morrison looked slightly puzzled. Safety measures aren't really necessary. Our atmosphere is quite mild. You could probably breathe it without any protection at all, though we understand if you prefer to take precautions. The Alliance representatives looked at each other in confusion. Commander Thrick spoke first. You mean your atmosphere won't cause immediate chemical burns or radiation poisoning? Of course not, Dr. Grant replied, looking genuinely surprised by the question. Our air is perfectly safe. Billions of humans breathe it every day without any problems. But surely there must be some hazards, insisted Rex. Toxic particles, corrosive elements, something that makes it challenging to survive. Captain Morrison shook his head. The only real danger would be if you couldn't process oxygen properly. But your analysis should have shown that your physiology can handle our atmospheric composition without any issues. Zethkar felt a growing sense of unease. His people had conquered worlds where the very ground was molten rock, where the air itself was a weapon that could kill in seconds. The humans were describing an atmosphere so gentle and safe that it seemed almost impossible. Perhaps, he said carefully, we should proceed with the installation. Experience will teach us more than speculation. The humans nodded eagerly, and the group moved toward the prepared chamber. It was a large room with reinforced walls and multiple emergency exits designed to contain any potential atmospheric hazards. The Alliance engineers had installed backup life support systems and emergency protocols that could evacuate the entire section of the station if necessary. This seems like a lot of preparation for atmospheric processors, observed Dr. Grant as they entered the chamber. We prefer to be cautious when dealing with unknown atmospheric conditions, Zethkar replied. Our species have learned that environmental changes can be deadly if not properly managed. The 12 atmospheric processors were brought into the chamber by robotic carriers. Each unit was carefully placed and connected to the station's power systems. The Alliance engineers ran multiple diagnostic checks before giving the approval to proceed. The processors are ready for activation, reported Chief Engineer Grix, whose people had evolved in the crushing depths of a gas giant's atmosphere. All safety systems are online and monitoring. Zethkar looked around the chamber at his fellow Alliance representatives. They were all present, the finest examples of survival from the galaxy's most hostile worlds. If anyone could safely experience an alien atmosphere, it would be them. Before we begin, he said, I want to thank the humans for this generous gift. The opportunity to experience your world's atmosphere is unprecedented in Alliance history. Captain. Morrison stepped forward with a control device. The honor is ours, Ambassador. We hope this will be the beginning of a long and prosperous relationship between our peoples. He pressed the activation button, and the processors hummed to life. Status lights flickered green as the machines began their work, slowly converting the chamber's atmosphere to match the conditions of distant Earth. The conversion will take approximately 4 hours, Dr. Grant explained. You'll be able to remove your environmental protection and breathe naturally in our atmosphere. Zethkar watched the atmospheric readings on the chamber's displays. The changes were subtle at first, but gradually the composition shifted toward the human specifications. The temperature stabilized at a moderate level that felt almost cool to his heat-adapted physiology. It's remarkable, murmured Dr. Vashti, studying her instruments. The atmosphere is becoming incredibly stable and uniform. There are no dangerous fluctuations at all. That's normal for Earth, Captain Morrison said. Our planet has very consistent atmospheric conditions. It's one of the reasons life was able to develop so successfully there. As the hours passed, the Alliance representatives watched in fascination as the processors worked. The atmospheric composition gradually matched Earth's specifications, creating a pocket of alien air in the heart of their station. War. Captain Jake Morrison stood at the wide window of his office, watching the morning sun rise over the Pacific Ocean. The light reflected off the glass towers of Earth's United Colonial Command headquarters, making them shine like silver needles against the blue sky. He had been waiting for this moment for 3 months, ever since the first contact protocols were established with the Death World Alliance. The door chimed softly, and Dr. Lisa Grant entered carrying a thick folder of documents. Her lab coat was wrinkled from working through the night, and her dark hair was pulled back in a messy bun. She looked tired but excited, the way scientists always did when they were about to share something important. Captain Morrison, the atmospheric processors are ready, she said, setting the folder down on his desk. All 12 units have been tested and calibrated according to the Alliance specifications. Jake turned from the window and picked up the folder. The documents inside contained detailed technical specifications, biological analysis reports, and diplomatic correspondence. The pages were filled with complex chemical formulas and molecular diagrams that meant nothing to him, but everything to the scientists who had worked on this project. Remind me again why this gift is so important, Jake said, settling into his chair behind the desk. Lisa sat down across from him and opened her own copy of the report. The Death World Alliance contacted us 6 months ago. They're a coalition of species from the galaxy's most dangerous planets. We're talking about beings who evolved on worlds with active volcanoes, crushing gravity, toxic atmospheres, and radiation levels that will kill most life forms instantly. Jake nodded. He had read the initial contact reports, but the details still amazed him. The Alliance included species like the Molten Crust Collective, who lived in underground cities beneath lava flows, and the Acid Rain Coalition, whose home world had an atmosphere that could dissolve metal in minutes. They want to establish diplomatic relations with Earth, Lisa continued, but they're concerned about the biological compatibility issues. Their representatives can't visit our worlds without extensive life support systems, and we can't visit theirs without similar protection. So we're giving them atmospheric processors to solve that problem, Jake said. Exactly. These processors will create small pockets of Earth-normal atmosphere in their diplomatic facilities. The Alliance specifically requested this technology so their representatives could experience what it's like to breathe our air. They believe it will help them understand human physiology better and improve our diplomatic relations. Jake flipped through the technical specifications. The atmospheric processors were about the size of a large refrigerator with sleek metal casings and digital control panels. Each unit could process and maintain the air quality for a space roughly the size of a large conference room. What exactly goes into Earth-normal atmosphere? He asked. Lisa smiled and pulled out a simplified chart. The basic composition is pretty straightforward. About 78% nitrogen, 21% oxygen, and 1% other gases including argon, carbon dioxide, and trace amounts of various elements. That doesn't sound too complicated. The major components aren't, Lisa agreed. But Earth's atmosphere is incredibly complex when you get down to the microscopic level. Our air contains water vapor, pollen from plants, dust particles, salt crystals from the ocean, and countless other microscopic elements that make up what we consider normal, breathable air. Jake studied the chart more carefully. Are any of these components dangerous to the Alliance species? Not based on our analysis of their physiology, Lisa said. The Alliance members come from environments so hostile that Earth's atmosphere should seem incredibly mild to them. These are beings who breathe sulfur compounds and methane without any problems. Our oxygen-nitrogen mix should be like breathing pure mountain air compared to what they're used to. Lieutenant Commander Ryan Parker knocked on the doorframe and entered the office. He was a tall man with short blonde hair and the kind of precise movements that came from years of military training. In his hands, he carried a data tablet showing shipping manifests and loading schedules. "Captain, the atmospheric processors are being loaded onto the UCS Horizon as we speak," Ryan reported. "The diplomatic vessel is scheduled to depart for Nexus Prime in 6 hours." Nexus Prime was the neutral meeting station where first contact with the Alliance had been established. It was a massive space station built at the edge of Alliance territory, designed to accommodate the environmental needs of multiple species. The station had taken 2 years to construct and represented the most advanced piece of diplomatic architecture in known space. "Any word from the Alliance about the reception ceremony?" Jake asked. Ryan checked his tablet. "Ambassador Zefkar of the Molten Crust Collective will be receiving the gift personally. He's bringing representatives from all the major Alliance worlds. This is being treated as a significant diplomatic event throughout their territory." Jake felt a flutter of nervousness in his stomach. First contact situations were always delicate, but this one felt especially important. The Death World Alliance represented dozens of species and hundreds of worlds. If humanity could establish good relations with them, it would open up enormous opportunities for trade, scientific exchange, and mutual defense against hostile forces in the galaxy. "Dr. Grant, is there anything special the Alliance representatives need to know about operating the processors?" Jake asked. "The units are completely automated," Lisa replied. "Once they're activated, they'll begin processing the local atmosphere and gradually convert it to Earth normal conditions. The transition takes about 4 hours for a standard room, and the processors will maintain optimal air quality indefinitely as long as they have power." "What about maintenance?" "Minimal. The processors are designed to be self-cleaning and self-calibrating. They'll send diagnostic reports back to Earth once a week, but otherwise they should run without any intervention for years." Jake closed the folder and stood up. "All right, let's go see our gift before it ships out." The three of them took an elevator down to the loading docks where the UCS Horizon was being prepared for its diplomatic mission. The ship was a sleek white vessel about the size of a large cruise ship, designed specifically for diplomatic missions. Its holds were filled with cultural artifacts, scientific equipment, and trade samples that would be presented to the Alliance as gestures of good faith. In Cargo Bay 3, the 12 atmospheric processors were lined up in neat rows. Each unit was secured in a protective foam casing and labeled with detailed operating instructions in both human languages and the Alliance's common trade tongue. "They look so simple," Jake said, walking around one of the units. "Hard to believe something this basic could be so important for galactic diplomacy." "Sometimes the simplest gifts are the most meaningful," Lisa said. "We're not trying to impress them with advanced technology. We're trying to share something fundamental about what it means to be human. The air we breathe, the atmosphere we evolved in, the environment that shaped us as a species." Ryan was checking the securing straps on each unit, making sure they would survive the journey to Nexus Prime. The Alliance representatives seemed genuinely excited about this gift when we first proposed it. Ambassador Zefkar said his people had never encountered a species willing to share something so basic and essential. "That's because most species take their atmosphere for granted," Lisa said. "We don't think about the air we breathe until we can't breathe it anymore. By sharing our atmosphere with the Alliance, we're sharing one of the most intimate aspects of our existence as a species." Jake nodded, understanding the deeper meaning behind the gift. "When do we expect to hear back from them?" "The processors should be installed and activated within 48 hours of arrival," Ryan said. "Ambassador Zefkar has promised to send a detailed report out their experience with Earth normal atmosphere." As they walked back toward the elevator, Jake felt a sense of satisfaction about the mission. The atmospheric processors represented months of work by Earth's best scientists and engineers. They were a perfect example of human ingenuity and diplomatic goodwill. "I have a good feeling about this," he said, as the elevator doors closed. "I think this gift is going to be the beginning of a beautiful friendship between humanity and the Death World Alliance." Neither Lisa nor Ryan said anything, but they both smiled. The future of human alliance relations looked bright, and it all started with something as simple as the air they breathed. The Zephyrian command ship hung in orbit above Earth like a massive tumor against the stars. Inside its biomechanical chambers, the collective mind struggled to understand what was happening on the planet below. For the first time in a million years of conquest, their neural disruptors had failed completely. Worse, some humans were actively resisting the hive mind's influence. The collective had never encountered anything like this. "Report from Surface Group 7, one of the connected voices said through the shared consciousness. "3 bioships have gone silent in the New York sector." "Surface Group 12 reports similar losses in London," another voice added. "The humans are using unknown tactics." The collective mind focused its attention on the combat data streaming from Earth. What it saw defied all previous understanding of human capability. Individual humans were moving faster than should be possible. They were surviving direct hits from bioweapons that should have killed them instantly. Most disturbing of all, they seemed to know exactly where to strike to cause maximum damage to Zephyrian forces. "These are not the same humans we studied on the colonies," the collective realized. On Earth, Captain Tony Mitchell moved through the ruins of Manhattan with deadly purpose. 3 days of combat had taught him and his team exactly how to hurt the Zephyrians. Now they were putting that knowledge to devastating use. Bioship located. Staff Sergeant Nina Rodriguez reported from her position 2 blocks away. 15 Zephyrian soldiers setting up a command post. "Sam, what's your count?" Tony asked. "I see 12 more soldiers guarding the ship's root system," Lieutenant Sam Turner replied. "They're trying to tap into the city's power grid." Tony smiled grimly. The aliens were following the same pattern they had used on 12 colony worlds. Land the bioships, establish command posts, convert local infrastructure to feed the collective. But this time, they were facing opposition they couldn't understand or counter. "Nina, take the command post. Sam, you handle the guards." "I'll deal with the bioship itself," Tony ordered. "Copy that," both soldiers replied. Tony watched as Nia moved into position. Her enhanced physiology allowed her to climb building walls like a spider, moving in complete silence. The Zephyrian sensors were designed to detect normal human movement patterns. They couldn't track someone whose genetic code had been awakened to its true potential. Nina reached the roof above the alien command post and looked down at the enemy soldiers. They were arranged in perfect formation, each one positioned exactly the same distance from the others. Their movements were synchronized down to the smallest detail. She dropped a small explosive device into the center of their formation. The blast killed 3 Zephyrians instantly, but the real damage was psychological. Through their shared consciousness, every alien in the area felt the deaths as if they were their own. The surviving soldiers staggered, their formation broken by shared trauma. "Neural feedback confirmed," Nina reported. "The collective consciousness is amplifying the damage." Meanwhile, Sam was putting his own discoveries to use. He had learned that Zephyrian bioweapons were actually living creatures, connected to their users through neural links. If you could disrupt those links, the weapons became useless. Sam moved behind the guard position and grabbed the nearest alien soldier. His enhanced strength allowed him to crush the creature's neural connection points. Instantly, all the bioweapons in the area went dead. "Weapon systems neutralized," Sam reported. Tony approached the bioship itself. The massive organic vessel was rooted deep into the ground, drawing energy from Earth's power grid. Its hull pulsed with a rhythm like a giant heartbeat. But Tony had learned something important about these ships. They weren't just vehicles. They were extensions of the collective mind itself. Each bioship contained a fragment of the hive mind's consciousness. He placed his hand on the ship's hull and concentrated. His enhanced neural architecture couldn't be absorbed by the collective, but it could disrupt the aliens' mental connections. He pushed his individual consciousness against the ship's shared mind. The effect was immediate and devastating. The bioship convulsed as Tony's individual thoughts crashed into its collective consciousness like a virus. The alien mind designed to suppress individual thinking couldn't process the flood of human emotions and memories. Across the city, every Zephyrian connected to that bioship felt the disruption. Some collapsed completely. Others began moving erratically. Their actions no longer coordinate with the group. Bioship neural network is fragmenting, Tony reported with satisfaction. Commander Jake Morrison watched the battle reports from Aurora Station with growing amazement. 3 days ago, the Zephyrian invasion had seemed unstoppable. Now the aliens were retreating from major population centers around the world. Sir, we're getting reports from all theaters, Lieutenant Amy Collins said as she approached his command station. The Return are not just fighting the Zephyrians. They're winning. Jake studied the tactical displays. In London, a team of Return had captured an entire bioship and were learning to operate its systems. In Tokyo, they had disrupted the alien communication network so badly that 3 Zephyrian squadrons were attacking each other by mistake. How is this possible? Jake asked Dr. Peter Hayes, who had been monitoring the combat data, smiled grimly. The Zephyrians made a fundamental error in their understanding of human nature. What do you mean? They assumed that individual consciousness was a weakness, Hayes explained. They built their entire civilization around suppressing individual thought in favor of collective unity. But humans are different, Amy realized. Exactly, Hayes confirmed. Human individual consciousness isn't a bug in our programming. It's a feature. And when you enhance it artificially, it becomes a weapon the collective can't defend against. Back on Earth, Tony's team was discovering just how powerful that weapon could be. As they moved from one alien position to another, they were learning to interface directly with Zephyrian biotechnology. I can read their communication signals, Nina reported as she examined a captured alien device. It's like the technology recognizing my enhanced neural patterns. Same here, Sam added. He was experimenting with a Zephyrian bioweapon. I think our modified consciousness is compatible with their systems. Tony tested this theory by placing his hand on another piece of alien equipment. Immediately, information began flowing into his mind. Technical specifications, tactical data, even fragments of the collective strategic planning. We're not just immune to their hive mind, he realized. We can actually hack into it. The implications were staggering. The Zephyrians had spent millions of years perfecting biotechnology that was operated through shared consciousness. They had never considered that an individual mind might be able to access their systems. Central Command, this is Alpha Team, Tony said into his communication device. We need to speak with Dr. Shaw immediately. Minutes later, Shaw's voice came through the communication link. Alpha Team, what's your status? Doctor, we can interface with their technology, Tony reported. My team has figured out how to read their communications, operate their weapons, and disrupt their bioships. There was silence on the other end of the link for several seconds. Repeat that, Captain, Shaw finally said. We can hack the collective mind, Tony explained. Our enhanced consciousness can penetrate their systems, the same way theirs can penetrate normal human minds. Impossible, Shaw said. The biotechnology is completely alien. Not anymore, Sam interjected. It recognizes us as valid users. I think the genetic activation made us compatible with any consciousness-based technology. Dr. Shaw's excitement was obvious even through the communication link. Captain, I need you to test something. Can you access their strategic databases? Tony found a Zephyrian command console and placed both hands on its biomechanical surface. Immediately, his consciousness was flooded with information. Fleet positions, resource allocations, planned invasion routes for other worlds. But he also felt something else. Fear, confusion, growing panic throughout the collective mind. They're terrified, Tony reported. The collective has never faced anything like us. They don't know how to fight individual consciousness that can't be suppressed. What are they planning? Shaw asked. Tony dug deeper into the alien database. They're considering retreat. Some factions in the collective want to abandon Earth completely. And the others? They want to destroy the planet rather than let us spread to other worlds. Tony replied grimly. Nina looked up from the alien equipment she was examining. Tony, I'm detecting massive energy signatures from their orbital ships. They're preparing something big. Sam checked his captured bioweapon. The local Zephyrian forces are pulling back to defensive positions. They're scared of us. Tony felt a surge of satisfaction. For 18 months, the Zephyrians had hunted humans across the galaxy. They had studied human behavior, exploited human weaknesses, and killed 3 billion people. Now they were learning what it felt like to be prey. All return teams, this is Alpha Leader. Tony broadcast on the Enhanced Communication Network. The enemy is in retreat. Press your attacks. Show them what happens when humans stop being victims. Around the world, the tide of battle was turning. The Zephyrians, masters. The first Zephyrian bioship broke through Earth's outer defense line at 0347 hours. Admiral Marcus Cole watched from the command center as humanity's most advanced weapons bounced harmlessly off the alien vessel's organic hull. All orbital platforms. At reporting weapon failure, Lieutenant Commander Steve Walsh announced, "Our plasma cannons aren't even scratching their armor." Admiral Cole had expected this. The Zephyrians had destroyed 12 human colonies using the same bioships. Each vessel was grown rather than built, its living hull able to heal damage faster than human weapons could inflict it. "How many ships in the first wave?" Cole asked. 47 bioships, sir. Each one roughly the size of a city block, Walsh replied. They're heading for major population centers. Cole activated his communication system. All defensive positions. This is Admiral Cole. Begin evacuation of civilian populations. Military units are to harass and delay the enemy, but do not engage directly. Sir, Walsh said quietly, shouldn't we be fighting them? We are fighting them, Cole replied. Just not the way they expect. 3,000 miles below, Captain Tony Mitchell crouched on a rooftop in New York City. The transformation had changed more than just his body. His enhanced senses could track the approaching bioships by their electromagnetic signatures. His improved mind could calculate their landing patterns and probable tactics. Alpha Team, report, he said into his communication device. Sam here, came Lieutenant Sam Turner's voice. I count 6 bioships heading for Manhattan. They'll touch down in about 20 minutes. Nina, what's your status? Tony asked. Staff Sergeant Nina Rodriguez here. I've got eyes on 4 bioships approaching Brooklyn. They're moving slower than expected. Tony smiled grimly. The Zephyrians were being cautious. They had learned from their attacks on the colonies that humans could be unpredictable. What they didn't know was that the humans they were about to face were no longer entirely human. Remember, people, Tony said to his team. We're not trying to stop the invasion. We're trying to learn how they work. The first bioship landed in Central Park with a sound like thunder. The organic vessel immediately began extending root-like structures into the ground, drawing nutrients from the soil. Within minutes, the ship would start producing the neural disruptors that had paralyzed the colonial populations, but Tony and his team were already moving. I can smell their biochemistry, Sam reported as he approached the landing site. It's like a mixture of rotting meat and ozone. I can feel their communication signals, Nina added. They're not using radio waves. It's some kind of quantum entanglement system. Tony dropped from the rooftop to street level, a fall that would have broken every bone in a normal human's body. His enhanced physiology absorbed the impact without effort. Around him, the city was eerily quiet. Most civilians had been evacuated, leaving only the return to face the invaders. Movement on the bioship, Sam reported. The hull is opening. Tony watched as sections of the organic vessel dilated like giant irises. Zephyrian ground forces began emerging. They looked like a cross between insects and reptiles, their bodies covered in chitinous armor that gleamed with a wet, oily sheen. 12 soldiers in the first wave, Nina counted. They're moving in perfect formation. Tony studied the aliens through his enhanced vision. Each Zephyrian moved with identical precision, their steps synchronized down to the millisecond. It was like watching parts of a single organism rather than individual creatures. They're all connected, Tony realized. Every thought, every action, perfectly coordinated. That's their strengths, Sam said. But it might also be their weakness. The Zephyrian soldiers began setting up equipment around their bioship. Tony recognized the neural disruptors from intelligence reports. Once activated, the devices would flood the area with signals designed to overwhelm human consciousness. Let's see how they react to individual thinking, Tony said. He moved closer to the alien position, using enhanced stealth abilities that seemed to come from deep genetic memory. His ancestors had been hunters and survivors, able to move without detection through hostile territory. The Zephyrians didn't notice him until he was 20 feet away. Tony threw a piece of concrete at the nearest alien soldier. The rock struck the creature's helmet with a loud clang. All 12 Zephyrians turned toward him instantly, their movements perfectly synchronized. Interesting, Nina said over the communication link. They all reacted to a threat against one of them. The aliens raised their weapons, biomechanical devices that looked like they had been grown rather than manufactured. Tony felt the familiar sensation of neural disruptor energy washing over him. Normal humans would have collapsed immediately, their minds overwhelmed by the alien signals. But Tony's enhanced neural architecture simply absorbed the attack without effect. The disruptors don't work on us, he reported with satisfaction. The Zephyrians seemed confused. They increased the power of their weapons, flooding the area with enough neural energy to paralyze 100 humans. Tony felt nothing but a slight tingling sensation. They don't understand why their primary weapon isn't working, Sam observed. He had moved to a different position and was watching the aliens through his enhanced vision. Tony decided to test something else. He picked up a piece of metal debris and threw it with enhanced strength. The projectile struck one of the aliens with enough force to punch through its armor. The wounded Zephyrian collapsed, but something unexpected happened. All the other aliens staggered as if they had been struck as well. Did you see that? Nina asked. When one got hurt, they all felt it. Shared nervous system, Tony realized. Damage to one affects the whole group. This was information that could change everything. The Zephyrians' greatest strength was also a critical vulnerability. Alpha? Team fall back, Tony ordered. We've learned what we came for. But the aliens weren't finished. As Tony moved away from their position, he felt something probing at his mind. It wasn't the crude neural disruptor energy. This was more subtle, like fingers trying to pry open. A locked door. They're trying to connect to my thoughts, he reported. Same here, Sam said. It feels like something trying to crawl inside my head. Nina's voice came over the communication link, strained with effort. They're trying to add US to their collective consciousness. Tony could feel the alien intelligence pressing against his mental defenses. It was vast and cold, containing the thoughts of billions of connected minds. For a moment, he glimpsed the true scope of the Zephyrian collective, but his enhanced neural architecture held firm. The genetic modifications had created mental barriers that the hive mind couldn't penetrate. Resistance confirmed, he reported. The hive mind can't absorb us. The aliens suddenly stopped their attack and began communicating among themselves in rapid clicking sounds. Tony's enhanced hearing picked up the conversation, and his improved pattern recognition began translating the meaning. They're afraid, he realized. They've never encountered minds they couldn't control. What are they saying? Sam asked. Tony listened more carefully. Something about aberrant consciousness and immune individuals. They're calling us a threat. To the collective. Good, Nina said grimly. Let them be afraid. More bioships were landing throughout the city. The Zephyrian invasion was proceeding according to their plan, but Tony knew that plan was about to encounter its first major problem. "Alpha Team, return to base," he ordered. "We need to report what we've learned." As they moved through the abandoned streets, Tony felt a new understanding settling into his enhanced mind. The Zephyrians had conquered dozens of worlds using the same tactics. Overwhelm the population with neural disruptors, absorb the survivors into the collective consciousness, and convert the planet's resources to fuel further expansion. But they had never faced humans whose minds couldn't be overwhelmed or absorbed. "Tony," Sam said as they regrouped, "I'm picking up communication signals from the other teams around the world." "What are they reporting?" "Same thing we found," Sam replied. "The neural disruptors don't work on the returned. The hive mind can't penetrate our defenses. And the aliens are starting to panic." Tony smiled. For 18 months, humanity had been the prey in this war. The Zephyrians had hunted humans across 12 worlds, studying their behavior and exploiting their weaknesses. Now the tables were about to turn. "Nina, what's our next objective?" Tony asked. "We hunt them," she replied simply. "They spent 18 months learning how to kill humans. Now they get to learn what happens when humans decide to kill them back." Tony looked up at the bioships, hovering over the city. Each one contained hundreds of Zephyrian soldiers, all connected to the collective consciousness, all sharing the same vulnerability he had just discovered. "Contact command," he ordered. "Tell them we're ready to begin." "Phase 2? What's Phase 2? Sam asked. Tony felt the predator instincts from his ancestral memory stirring in his enhanced mind, teaching the Zephyrians what it means to be hunted. The war for Earth was about to begin in earnest. But this time, humanity would be the hunters. Captain Tony Mitchell stood in the hallway outside the briefing room, reading the message on his tablet for the 10th time. The words hadn't changed, but he kept hoping they would. His wife Kelly had been on Haven Colony when the Zephyrians attacked. Her last transmission had been cut short by static and screaming. "You ready for this?" asked Lieutenant Sam Turner, the man standing next to him. Sam was Special Forces, one of the toughest soldiers Tony had ever met. But his hands were shaking. As he held his own tablet, "No," Tony replied honestly. "But I'm going to do it anyway." The door to the briefing room opened. Dr. Helen Shaw stepped out, followed by a military officer Tony didn't recognize. Around them, dozens of other volunteers waited in the hallway. Soldiers, police officers, firefighters, mountain climbers, deep-sea divers. People who had spent their lives pushing the limits of human endurance. "Ladies and gentlemen," Dr. Shaw began, "thank you for coming. I know this decision wasn't easy." Tony looked around at the other volunteers. He recognized some faces from the news reports about the colony attacks. These were people who had lost everything, just like him. "Before we begin, I want you to understand exactly what you're volunteering for," Shaw continued. "This process has never been tested on living humans. We don't know all the side effects. We don't know if everyone will survive." A woman near the back raised her hand. "Dr. Shaw, what exactly are you going to do to us?" Shaw pulled out a tablet and projected a holographic display into the hallway. The human genome contains genetic sequences that have been dormant for thousands of years. These sequences were activated in our ancestors during times of extreme survival stress. "What kind of sequences?" asked Sam. "Enhanced physical capabilities, improved healing rates, increased mental processing speed," Shaw explained. "But most importantly, resistance to external mental influence." Tony stepped forward. "The Zephyrians use mind control?" "They use a form of collective consciousness," Shaw replied. "They suppress individual thought patterns and replace them with hive mind control. Normal humans can't resist it, but activated humans can." "Activated humans?" asked the woman in the back. "That's what we're calling people who undergo this process," Shaw explained. "Your genetic potential will be unlocked. You'll become something beyond normal human limitations." The volunteers looked at each other nervously. Tony thought about Kelly's last message. She had been trying to tell him something important, but the transmission had been cut off before she could finish. "What are the risks?" asked the man Tony. Recognized as a former mountain rescue specialist, Shaw didn't try to sugarcoat it. Brain damage, organ failure, psychological breaks, or death. The process pushes the human body and mind to their absolute limits. "And if we survive?" Sam asked. "Then you become humanity's best hope of fighting back," Shaw replied. Tony raised his hand. "Where do we sign up?" Shaw smiled grimly. "Follow me." They were led through a series of corridors to a massive underground facility. The walls were lined with medical equipment Tony didn't recognize. Scientists in lab coats moved between stations, checking readings and preparing equipment. "This is Facility Alpha," Shaw explained. "We have similar installations in 12 locations around the world. Each one is designed to handle 50 volunteers at a time." They entered a large chamber filled with what looked like medical pods. Each pod was connected to dozens of cables and monitoring devices. The sight made Tony's stomach turn. "These are the transformation chambers," Shaw said. "The process takes 72 hours. During that time, you'll be unconscious while your genetic structure is modified." "What happens to our minds during the process?" asked a young woman who had introduced herself as a former Navy SEAL. "That's where it gets interesting," Shaw replied. "The volunteers who have undergone partial testing report experiencing visions of human evolutionary history, memories that aren't their own." "What kind of memories?" Tony asked. "Ancestral memories," Shaw explained. "Genetic information passed down through generations. You might experience what it was like to survive an ice age, or fight off predators, or endure a plague." Sam looked skeptical. "That sounds like science fiction." "So did interstellar travel until we figured out how to do it," Shaw replied. "So did alien contact until the Zephyrians showed up." Human DNA is far more complex than we originally thought. They were assigned to individual preparation rooms. Tony sat on a medical examination table while a technician attached monitoring devices to his chest and arms. The equipment hummed softly as it recorded his vital signs. "Captain Mitchell," Dr. Shaw said as she entered his room, "I need to ask you about your motivation for volunteering." Tony looked at her directly. "My wife was killed on Haven Colony. I want to make sure the same thing doesn't happen to anyone else." Shaw nodded. "Personal loss is a strong motivator, but I need to know that you're mentally prepared for what's coming." "What do you mean?" "The transformation process works by activating stress response systems that have been dormant for millennia," Shaw explained. "Your body and mind will be pushed beyond normal human limits. Some volunteers don't survive the psychological pressure." Tony thought about Kelly's face the last time he had seen her. She had been excited about the engineering project she was working on at Haven Colony. She had believed they were building something that would help humanity expand to the stars. "Doctor, I've already lost everything that mattered to me," Tony said. "The only thing keeping me going is the chance to fight back." Shaw made notes on her tablet. "That's exactly the mindset we need. The transformation requires complete commitment to survival." "What about after?" Tony asked. "If we survive the process, what happens then?" "Then you become part of the first wave," Shaw replied. "We call them the Returned. They'll be humanity's special forces against the Zephyrians." "The Returned?" "People who have returned to humanity's original potential," Shaw explained. "Before civilization made us soft, our ancestors were incredibly resilient. They survived conditions that would kill modern humans." Tony was moved to the preparation area where other volunteers were getting ready. Sam was in the pod next to his, already connected to the monitoring equipment. "You scared?" Sam asked. "Terrified," Tony admitted. "But I'm more scared of doing nothing." "Same here," Sam replied. "My whole unit was killed on New Sacramento. I was off-world on a training mission when it happened." Tony understood. Survivor's guilt was something all the volunteers shared. They had lived when others had died, and now they were volunteering to risk their lives to prevent more deaths. Dr. Shaw addressed the group over the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, we're about to begin the activation process. You'll be unconscious for the next 72 hours. When you wake up, you'll either be transformed or you won't wake up at all. Tony closed his eyes and thought about Kelly. He remembered her laugh, her smile, the way she would get excited about solving engineering problems. She had died believing in humanity's future among the stars. Beginning genetic activation sequence, announced the technician. Tony felt a warm sensation spreading through his body. The monitoring equipment began beeping faster as his heart rate increased. Around him, other volunteers were experiencing the same thing. Initiating neural pathway modification, the technician continued. Suddenly, Tony wasn't in the medical pod anymore. He was standing in a frozen landscape, snow swirling around him, but he wasn't cold. His body was adapted to the environment, covered in thick fur and muscle. He was hunting something large and dangerous. This wasn't his memory, but somehow, he knew exactly what to do. His enhanced senses could track the creature through the storm. His strengthened muscles could run for hours without tiring. His improved mind could plan the hunt strategy. Memory integration at 30%. He heard Dr. Shaw's voice from very far away. The scene changed. Now he was in a forest, but not like any forest that existed in modern times. The trees were enormous, and dangerous predators moved through the shadows. But he wasn't afraid. He was the apex predator here. His transformed body could climb any tree, swim any river, fight any enemy. His enhanced mind could solve problems that would confuse normal humans. He was what humanity had been before civilization made them dependent on technology. Genetic activation at 60%. Dr. Shaw's voice said. Tony experienced dozens of ancestral memories. His genetic code was remembering what it meant to be human in the truest sense. Not the humans who lived in comfortable cities, but the humans who had survived every disaster that nature could throw at them. Activation complete, the technician announced. Tony opened his eyes. The world looked different. He could see details that had been invisible before. He could hear conversations happening in other rooms. He could smell the individual scents of every person in the facility. "How do you feel?" Dr. Shaw asked. Tony sat up slowly. His body felt different, stronger, more coordinated. His mind was processing information faster than ever before. "I feel like I remember how to be human," he said. Sam was sitting up in the pod next to him. His eyes had a new intensity, like he was seeing the world clearly for the first time. "The memories," Sam said. "They're not just memories. They're instructions." Dr. Shaw smiled. "Welcome to the next phase of human evolution, gentlemen. You are no longer just soldiers. You are the returned."